This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, our very special guest, Stephen Coughlin. He is the co-founder of unconstrainedanalytics.org and the author of the new book, Catastrophic Failure, Blindfolding America in the Face of Jihad. Stephen, what an honor to have you on the Glazov Gang.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Before we begin, let me just let you tell us why you wrote this book.
Well, I wrote this book because I was mobilized onto active duty for my private sector job in September 2011. And as I got to the Joint Chiefs of Staff Intelligence Directorate, and as I was there, I started realizing there were problems, and I started putting together briefs. And over time, trial and error, these briefs got to be very good. In fact, so good that some in the special operations community branded them the Red Pill Brief from the movie The Matrix. A woman named Christine Brim, who at the time worked for the Center for Security Policy, asked me to write a book. She flat out said that these are mind-changing briefs, and someone's going to kill me one day. And so I needed to write a book to memorialize these. It took a while to write because in the process of taking briefings to writings, you want to make sure you lock down all the citations. So what got me to do this is I just think this war has been fought completely along the wrong lines by people who aren't even curious enough to understand the nature of the enemy who understands us.
And Stephen, you point out that the threat in many respects has become a nameless abstraction, that where you worked in these agencies, in the government, there is now the huge failure that there is no quote-unquote threat identification.
Absolutely. In fact, if you understand that the goal of intelligence is to provide warning based on facts that in furtherance of threat identification, the entire intelligence work product has been completely turned on its head. And it's been done through the use of these postmodern, politically correct academic or quasi-academic formulas that let us pretend that you can come up with a psychosocial model of behavior, and that becomes a proxy for talking about Al-Qaeda.
Okay, now, and as you write, there's now a preference for this political correctness over accuracy, but it's reached such an extent that we're actually ignoring what the enemy itself and himself is saying why they're operating. So the enemy's saying, we're doing this because of this, and we're ignoring that and listening to these, we could say leftists and progressives, and they're telling us what the threat is.
I think we've gone way beyond that, actually. I think we're at the point right now where you are forbidden to talk about the enemy's explicitly stated basis of their threat doctrine, which categorically drives everything they do, to the point where knowing that doctrine gives you the ability to forecast future actions, which I have to tell you I've done flawlessly. It's not just that the left is doing this, but the people they bring in to help them are people like the Muslim Brotherhood or our foreign coalition partners abroad. Now, I'm not trying to deride our foreign coalition partners abroad, at least the one or two who actually is an ally, but our job, when you take an oath to support and defend the Constitution, is for us to know the enemy, unconstrained by any foreign influence. And so I think the whole thing is a complete disaster.
But Stephen, in other words, I mean, imagine during the Cold War. This is the image I got from reading your book. The Cold War, and we go to the KGB to advise us on how to fight the Soviet Empire.
Yes, and the first thing the KGB tells you is there is no KGB. And because you've hired us as consultants and it would be an international incident for them to get mad, you better do what he says. And in fact, that's exactly what's happened.
Why would somebody like Mohammed Ali Biari be on the Homeland Security Advisory Council? He's gone now, but why was he there?
Why was he there? Well, from his perspective, because he's got clear Muslim Brotherhood background, it's to come in and subvert. The question I think you're really asking is, why would he be allowed to come in? And I think that that's where we go. We looked in 2007. There was a shift in our warfighting foreign policy under Secretary Condoleezza Rice, where she decided that the moderate Muslim Brotherhood was the counterweight to radical Al-Qaeda, and then operated on that. And then Secretary Chertoff in 2008 came up with this paper that flooded through the entire national security universe, saying that with the help of his moderate American Muslim friends, almost all of them brothers, we could no longer use words like jihad, caliphate, sharia, ummah, against an enemy that unconditionally and categorically defines himself in those terms.
And the people who do this, and you were one of them, they either get rid of them, or there's, as you say, Soviet-style purges and re-education and disciplinary matters.
Absolutely. In fact, we have the document where the Brotherhood demanded a purge, and the response was, we're going to do a purge. And I was named on one of those documents, as a matter of fact. A member of Congress who was on the HPSI, House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, actually gave me a PDF of a paper or a letter to the White House from Brotherhood leadership demanding that I be stopped.
Stephen, in one part of your book, you talk about how Muslim Brotherhood leaders must just have a hard time not laughing out loud while they're meeting with U.S. officials.
Absolutely. I actually do believe that they wait till they clear the cameras in the parking lot before they stop laughing, because I think they expected to win on a subversion campaign. But I think that this whole politically correct softening that we've seen starting in the late 80s, that has had this bludgeoning effect on our bureaucracies, our national security bureaucracies, and then has had a special effect on who gets promoted by supporting them, has got these people so soft that they don't understand that if they're doing intelligence, their job is to know the enemy, and the first thing they do is rule out knowing the enemy. In fact, I argue that for professionals, you have the duty to be competent, that is the duty to know, and therefore professionals in the national security community, when they fail in their duty of competency, they're failing in their duty to support and defend the Constitution.
Thank you, Stephen. And you write how the Muslim Brotherhood and our enemies, they already know our desire to delude ourselves. And you write that the enemy has, quote, successfully calculated that they could win the war by convincing our national security leaders of the immorality of studying and knowing the enemy. So the enemy now knows that we're afraid to know them.
Well, I think it goes beyond that. I think they know we're afraid to know them because, in fact, they're doing the training inside to tell us it's immoral. I mean, it's that bad. It's it is asking the KGB to come in and train our intelligence to do threat analysis against the Soviet Union.
And you talk about the explanatory memorandum and these documents that were found and presented in the Holy Land Foundation trial. And in those documents, the Muslim Brotherhood is very confident that they will defeat us by our hands. And they're confident about this.
Absolutely. The explanatory memorandum that was written in 1991 by Muhammad Akram, the head of the Muslim Brotherhood, a Muslim Brotherhood leader, wrote and said that their job is a massive penetration subversion campaign where they would get us to undermine ourselves. And in fact, that document was seized by the FBI in a raid of a Muslim Brotherhood archive, and it was admitted into evidence in a federal case. So the very FBI today that is firing people for using this information, and the very Justice Department that gained a prosecution on just that type of evidence, is now firing people for relaying on that same type of evidence. I could tell you the first person to write an analysis of the explanatory memorandum was me in 2007. And I wrote my thesis for the National Defense Intelligence College in August 2007. And in September 2007, I wrote the analysis of the explanatory memorandum. And by December of 2008, of 2007, I was being pushed out.
Stephen, you write that the public face of Islam is now painted and molded in America by the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes, I would say I was in Egypt recently talking to some people in the Egyptian government and people who are leaders, social leaders, and they couldn't understand why America was doing what they were doing. I mean, they think we're a superpower, so there must be design. And what we explained to them was that the public face of Islam in America is the Muslim Brotherhood. And at first they were very, very skeptical. And now over the period of time we were there the first time, we showed them what was going on. And they started to realize not only we're not joking, but it was more serious than they could think. This becomes very important because when Hamas was basically defeated in the early 1980s, they came to Northern Virginia and set up camp. And now with Egypt, and then they went back when they were able to recover. And now with the Arab countries basically looking to go after the Brotherhood and Egypt in full-blown war against them, they are seriously worried that once again they'll have a hijra come to America and London and be able to regroup from there. And we'll call them refugees.
Stephen, we have under a minute. What a wonderful situation it would be if the next American president got into office and said, I want Stephen Coughlin in my office tomorrow. And you came in and he said, tell me the first things I got to start doing. What would you tell him or her?
The first thing I would do is declare the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. The second thing I would do is I'd reinitiate the Holy Land Foundation trials to the extent that we can, because, given statute of limitations. And the third is I would make sure they were pushed out of the government, and I would look to find those people who actively facilitated their presence when they either knew or should have known that their mission was to subvert or destroy America. And at the professional level, that's almost everybody, because those people who chose not to know because they got promoted, they're the same people who are giving orders so people abroad, our soldiers, would get killed. And and also innocent Muslims, innocent Yazidis, innocent Christians in Syria. This is staggering. I would call for that. I would call for a redesign of our terrorism strategy, and I would go after the combating violent extremism narrative, which I think exists to completely suppress our countering terrorism mission, that has our FBI leaders feel it's more important to do outreach with the Brotherhood than do counterterrorism against them. And I think that that's what I would do. I have to say, we have to do stuff over there, but it would have to start here.
Really hope you're going to be a voice that's going to be heard in the next administration. Stephen Coughlin, thank you so much for writing Catastrophic Failure. All of our viewers, get this book. It is a must read. Stephen, I hope you'll come back on the Glazov Gang soon, because I need to have a few more conversations with you, if not many.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, get Catastrophic Failure by Stephen Coughlin. You got to read it, and it'll equip you with what you can start also doing and what you need to know to defend this civilization and America. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like the Glazov Gang, support us at jamieglazov.com. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. We'll see you on the next edition of the Glazov Gang. Good night.